Think you know everything about the iconic Boston bar, where everybody knows your name? From a character killed by a Zamboni to a theme song with 6 voices of the same person, the beloved sitcom Cheers hid some truly bizarre secrets behind its warm facade. The show's hinged bar, improvised trivia facts, and a cast that tried to break their youngest member through arm wrestling competitions reveal a production full of unexpected twists and technical wizardry. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Cheers 1982. Fact 1. The bar was built on a secret hinge. If you ever watched Cheers closely, you might have noticed something strange about the iconic bar where Sam Malone served drinks for 11 seasons. There was a pronounced crack or line running right down the center of the wooden bar top, visible from the studio audience's perspective and clearly noticeable in many episodes. Most viewers probably assumed this was just a design choice or perhaps a flaw in the set construction, but this crack actually served a very clever hidden purpose that made filming much easier for the production crew. The entire Cheers bar was designed by production designer Richard Silbert, who created one of the most functional and well-thought-out sets in television history. The crack down the middle wasn't an accident or oversight, but rather an ingenious piece of engineering that allowed the set to transform when needed. The bar was built on a sophisticated hinge system, which meant that the right half of the bar could actually swing around and move out of the way whenever the cameras needed access to different areas of the set. This movable design allowed the right wall behind the bar to swing back and reveal Sam's office, which was an important location for many scenes throughout the series. Without this hinge system, the camera crew would have had to completely dismantle and rebuild parts of the set every time they needed to film scenes in Sam's private office space. The hinge mechanism saved countless hours of setup time and made it possible to move smoothly between bar scenes and office scenes during the same filming day. Producer Ken Levine explained that this was just one of many subtle and practical touches that Silbert incorporated into the Cheers set design. The production designer also made sure that bar patrons entered from the left side of the set, because most television audiences naturally read from left to right, making the left entrance feel more natural and welcoming to viewers. These kinds of thoughtful details helped make the Cheers bar feel like a real, lived-in place where people would actually want to spend their time drinking and socializing with friends. Fact 2. Two of the most beloved characters on Cheers almost never became regular cast members at all, and their journey to the main cast happened in completely unexpected ways that show how much luck and timing matter in television. George Wendt, who became famous as the beer-loving accountant Norm Peterson, was originally called in to audition for a tiny role as just another bar patron who would deliver a single line in the pilot episode. The producers had no intention of making him a recurring character, let alone one of the show's most memorable personalities who would appear in nearly every episode for 11 seasons. At the same time, John Ratzenberger came in to audition for the role that would eventually become Norm Peterson, but he didn't get the part since the producers decided to give it to George Wendt instead. Most actors would have simply thanked the casting directors and left disappointed, but Ratzenberger had a different approach that would change television history. Before leaving the audition room, he asked the producers if they had written a resident know-it-all character into their show, explaining that every bar in New England has someone who thinks they know everything about everything and loves to share random facts with anyone who will listen. The producers hadn't actually planned to include such a character in their original concept for the show, but Ratzenberger's suggestion made perfect sense to them because they knew he was right about real bars having these kinds of personalities. His quick thinking and improvisation convinced them to create the character of Cliff Clavin, the mail carrier, who would become famous for spouting endless streams of questionable trivia and bizarre facts that were usually completely wrong but delivered with total confidence. This spontaneous character creation turned out to be one of the best decisions the show ever made, because Cliff and Norm became best friends both on screen and off, creating one of the most entertaining duos in sitcom history. Their friendship gave the show a perfect example of the kind of regular customers who would actually hang out at a neighborhood bar every single day, and their conversations helped fill the background of countless scenes with authentic-feeling barroom chatter. Fact 3. Eddie LeBecq died by Zamboni for real-life rudeness. One of the most bizarre character deaths in television history happened because an actor made some very poor choices during a live radio interview, proving that what you say off-screen can sometimes have serious consequences for your on-screen character. Jay Thomas played Eddie LeBecq, a professional hockey player who became Carla's husband on Cheers during several episodes in the later seasons of the show. Eddie was brought in to give Carla Tortelli a romantic storyline and some character development beyond her usual role as the sharp-tongued waitress who insulted customers and co-workers with equal enthusiasm. Jay Thomas was working double duty during his time on Cheers because he was also the morning disc jockey at KPWR Power 106, a popular radio station in Los Angeles. This meant he was juggling his acting schedule with his radio career, which seemed to be working out well for everyone involved until he made a major mistake during one of his morning radio shows. A caller phoned in and asked Thomas what it was like working on the hit television show Cheers, which should have been an easy question for him to answer diplomatically and professionally. Instead of giving a polite response about enjoying his work with the talented cast, Thomas decided to be brutally honest in a way that was both unprofessional and insulting. He told his radio audience that working on Cheers was brutal, specifically because he had to kiss Rhea Perlman, who played his on-screen wife Carla. Thomas made several unflattering remarks about Perlman during the interview, not knowing that she was actually listening to his radio show that morning and heard every single word of his complaints about having to perform romantic scenes with her. When the producers of Cheers learned about Thomas's public insults toward one of their main cast members, they decided that Eddie LeBecq needed to disappear from the show permanently. When Cheers returned for the following season, viewers learned that Eddie had been killed in a freak accident involving a Zamboni, the ice-cleaning machine used at hockey rinks. The writers also revealed that Eddie had been living a double life as a bigamist, leaving Carla to deal with both his death and the discovery that he had another wife she never knew about. Fact 4. The theme song has 6 of the same voice. When you hear the rich, harmonious chorus of Where Everybody Knows Your Name, you might think you're listening to a full choir or group of backup singers creating that warm, welcoming sound that made the Cheers theme song so memorable. In reality, that entire chorus is actually just one person singing the same parts over and over again, layered together through studio recording techniques to create what sounds like multiple voices harmonizing perfectly with each other. Gary Portnoy, who wrote and performed the Cheers theme song, recorded his own voice 6 separate times to create the full sound of the chorus that plays during the opening credits of every episode. This was a common recording technique in the 1980s, when studios would have singers record multiple vocal tracks and then combine them to create a fuller, richer sound without having to hire additional backup singers or arrange for group recording sessions. The process involved Portnoy going into the recording studio and singing the chorus melody once, then listening to that recording while singing harmony parts that would blend well with his original vocal track. He repeated this process 6 times total, carefully layering each new vocal track on top of the previous ones until he had created what sounded like a small choir, singing together in perfect harmony. This recording method had an unexpected financial benefit for Portnoy that continues to pay off decades after the show ended its 11-season run in 1993. Since he technically performed as 6 different singers on the theme song recording, he receives 6 separate royalty payments every single time an episode of Cheers airs anywhere in the world. This means that when you watch a Cheers rerun on television or streaming services, Portnoy gets paid 6 times as much as he would if he had only sung one vocal track. The theme song was recorded on August 13, 1982, at Paramount Pictures in Los Angeles, and the producers decided to keep the intimate, simple feel of the original demo version rather than hiring a full band or orchestra. This decision to maintain the stripped-down sound helped preserve the cozy, late-night bar atmosphere that the song was meant to evoke, while also giving Portnoy his unique six-voice payday that continues to benefit him with every rerun. Fact 5. Coach had script pages taped under the bar. Nicholas Colasanto, the veteran actor who played the lovable but absent-minded bartender Coach during the first 3 seasons of Cheers, faced a challenge that many older actors deal with when working on fast-paced television productions. Colasanto had significant difficulty memorizing his lines, which became a real problem during filming because sitcoms typically shoot scenes quickly and need actors to deliver their dialogue smoothly without constantly stopping for forgotten words or missed cues. Rather than replacing Colasanto or making his character smaller, the production team came up with a creative solution that allowed him to continue playing Coach while getting the help he needed to remember his lines. The set designers installed special lighting underneath the famous Cheers bar, creating a hidden, illuminated area where Colasanto could discreetly read his script pages without the cameras or studio audience noticing what he was doing. The production crew would tape Colasanto's script pages to the underside of the bar counter, positioning them exactly where he would be standing during his scenes, so he could glance down and read his lines whenever he needed a reminder. The lighting system was carefully designed to provide enough illumination for him to see the text clearly, without creating any obvious light sources that would show up on camera or look unnatural to viewers watching at home. This accommodation worked so well that most viewers never realized Coach was reading his lines from hidden script pages, and Colasanto was able to continue delivering his character's sweet, confused dialogue with the same gentle charm that made Coach such a beloved part of the show. The arrangement allowed him to maintain his performance quality, while dealing with the memory issues that could have otherwise ended his role on one of television's most popular sitcoms. The hidden script system remained in place throughout Colasanto's time on the show, which lasted until his death in February of 1985 during the production of the 3rd season. His passing led to the creation of Woody Boyd, played by Woody Harrelson, who took over the role of the bar's second bartender but brought a completely different kind of innocent charm to the character. Fact 6. Sam's hair was completely fake. Throughout the entire 11-season run of Cheers, Sam Malone's thick, lustrous hair was one of his most distinctive features and became the subject of countless jokes and references on the show, with characters frequently commenting on how great his hair looked and Sam himself being quite vain about his appearance. What viewers didn't realize until years into the series was that Ted Danson, the actor who played the charming bartender and former baseball player, was actually completely bald and had been wearing a toupee during every single episode of the show. Danson's hair loss was a well-kept secret during the early years of Cheers, and the hairpiece was so convincing that most fans never suspected that Sam's famous locks weren't actually growing from Ted's head. The illusion was maintained through careful styling and professional hair department work that made the toupee look completely natural under the bright studio lights and from every camera angle used during filming. The truth about Danson's baldness became public knowledge in a rather dramatic way during the 1990 Emmy Awards ceremony when the actor decided to accept his award without wearing his usual hairpiece. This surprising revelation showed television audiences that the man they knew as Sam Malone was actually completely bald, which came as a shock to many viewers who had never questioned whether his hair was real. The show's writers eventually decided to incorporate this real-life fact into the fictional world of Cheers by having Sam admit his hair loss to Carla during a 1993 episode titled It's Lonely on the Top. This episode allowed the character to acknowledge what many viewers had already learned about the actor, creating a moment of honesty between Sam and his longtime co-worker that also served as a bit of meta-commentary about the show itself. Danson joined the ranks of many other leading men in Hollywood who wore hairpieces during their careers, including well-known actors like Sean Connery, Burt Reynolds, and William Shatner, proving that even the most confident and attractive television characters sometimes needed a little help to maintain their signature looks. Fact 7. The beer was disgusting fake brew. George Wendt's character, Norm Peterson, was famous for his love of beer and spent practically every scene at Cheers with a frothy mug in his hand, sipping away while delivering his witty one-liners and complaining about his life, his job, and his unseen wife, Vera. What viewers probably assumed was that Wendt got to enjoy cold, refreshing beer throughout his workday, but the reality of filming a television show meant that the beer he was drinking was actually one of the most unpleasant beverages imaginable. The Cheers set featured a fully functional bar with working taps, but instead of being connected to kegs of actual beer, those taps dispensed what the industry calls near beer, which is a non-alcoholic beverage with only 3.2% alcohol content. This low-alcohol substitute was necessary because actors needed to stay sober and focused during long filming days, and drinking real beer during multiple takes and rehearsals would have made it impossible for the cast to deliver their lines properly or hit their marks consistently. The fake beer situation got even worse because of the technical requirements of television production in the 1980s. The hot studio lights used for filming would quickly flatten any natural carbonation in the beverage, leaving it warm and lifeless within minutes of being poured. To combat this problem and maintain the appearance of fresh, foamy beer that viewers expected to see, the prop department added salt to the near beer, which helped create and maintain a thick head of foam that would look good on camera under those bright lights. This combination of warm, flat, non-alcoholic beer mixed with salt created what was essentially a disgusting, salty, room-temperature liquid that bore no resemblance to the cold, refreshing beverage that Norm was supposed to be enjoying. Despite how terrible this concoction tasted, Wendt had to periodically sip from his mug during scenes to maintain the authenticity of his character, who was supposed to be a dedicated beer drinker who spent most of his free time at the bar. The sacrifice Wendt made for his art becomes even more impressive when you consider that he had to drink this ghastly mixture for 11 seasons and 275 episodes, proving his commitment to making Norm Peterson one of television's most believable barflies. Fact 8. John Ratzenberger improvised most of Cliff's facts. One of Cliff Clavin's most memorable characteristics was his habit of spouting random pieces of trivia and supposed facts about everything from buffalo theory to the aerodynamics of various objects, usually delivered with complete confidence, even though most of his information was completely wrong or totally made up. What many viewers didn't realize was that John Ratzenberger, the actor who played the know-it-all mailman, was actually creating most of these bizarre factoids on the spot during filming, rather than simply reciting lines that had been written for him by the show's writers. During the early seasons of Cheers, Ratzenberger's dialogue was carefully scripted, like every other character's lines. But after a couple of years on the show, the producers began to notice that he had a natural talent for coming up with the kind of questionable trivia that perfectly fit Cliff's personality. The writers and producers realized they could trust Ratzenberger not to go too far off script or say anything inappropriate, so they gradually started giving him more freedom to improvise during his scenes. This creative freedom turned into a collaborative process, where Ratzenberger would ad-lib Cliff's random facts and pseudo-intellectual observations, often making up complete nonsense that sounded just plausible enough to be believable if you didn't think about it too carefully. The actor understood his character so well that he could instantly generate the kind of half-baked theories and confidently stated misinformation that made Cliff both annoying and endearing to the other characters and to viewers at home. Ratzenberger explained his approach to improvising comedy in a 1993 interview, saying that after a couple of years on the show, the producers realized they could trust him not to mess up the timing or flow of scenes. He noted that while it's relatively easy to improvise comedy material, the real art lies in knowing when to stop talking and let other actors have their moments, which is something that many performers struggle with when they're given the freedom to ad-lib. This improvisation technique became such an integral part of Cliff's character that many of the most memorable Cliff Clavin moments from the series were actually created spontaneously by Ratzenberger rather than being carefully crafted by the writing team. Fact 9. It almost got Woody Harrelson's show. Instead, when Ted Danson shocked the television world by announcing that he would be leaving Cheers at the end of the 1992 to 1993 season, the producers and network executives at NBC faced a difficult decision about what to do with one of the most successful sitcoms in television history. The show was still ranking in the top 10 most-watched programs and generating enormous amounts of money through advertising and syndication deals, so simply ending the series seemed like throwing away a goldmine that could potentially continue for several more profitable years. Rather than immediately canceling the show or searching for a completely new lead actor to replace Danson, the producers came up with what seemed like a logical solution that would allow Cheers to continue with a familiar face that audiences already loved. They decided that Woody Boyd, the sweet-natured and somewhat naive bartender played by Woody Harrelson, should take over as the new owner and main character of the bar, effectively transforming the show from being Sam Malone's story into Woody Boyd's story. This plan made sense from both a creative and business perspective, because Harrelson had been a popular cast member since joining the show in 1985 after Nicholas Colasanto's death, and his character had already established himself as someone capable of running the bar during Sam's frequent absences. The producers believed that viewers would accept Woody as the new central character, and that the show's essential dynamics could remain intact even without Ted Danson's presence. However, Woody Harrelson surprised everyone by turning down the opportunity to become the star of his own version of Cheers, despite the fact that it would have meant a significant increase in salary and screen time for him. Harrelson explained that he didn't believe the show could survive without Sam Malone, because Ted Danson's character was so central to everything that made Cheers special and popular with audiences. Harrelson's decision to decline the starring role effectively ended any possibility of continuing Cheers beyond Danson's departure, leading the producers to plan the series finale that would air in May of 1993 and become one of the most watched television episodes of the entire decade. Fact 10. The cast tried to break young Woody Harrelson. When 24-year-old Woody Harrelson joined the cast of Cheers in 1985 to replace Nicholas Colasanto as the bar's second bartender, he walked into a tight-knit group of actors who had been working together for several years and had already developed strong friendships and professional relationships with each other. The existing cast members, who were mostly in their late 30s at the time, looked at this young newcomer from Indiana and decided they needed to put him through some kind of unofficial initiation process to see what he was made of. Ted Danson later revealed that the established cast members had a very specific reaction to Harrelson's arrival on set, admitting that their first instinct was to try to humble the confident young actor who seemed almost too good to be true. Danson explained that the older actors, who were around 37 years old when Harrelson showed up, initially wanted to kick his behind and prove that experience and maturity could triumph over youth and enthusiasm. The cast decided to challenge Harrelson to various physical and mental competitions during their breaks from filming, starting with basketball games that they were confident they could win. However, their plan backfired completely when Harrelson turned out to be fantastic at basketball, easily outplaying the older actors who had expected to dominate the court. Undeterred by this initial defeat, they moved on to arm wrestling competitions, thinking that raw physical strength might give them an advantage over the younger man. Once again, Harrelson proved to be more than capable of holding his own against his older co-workers, winning the arm wrestling matches and further frustrating the cast members who were trying to establish their dominance. Finally, they decided to challenge him to chess games, figuring that intellectual strategy would surely be the area where their additional years of life experience would finally pay off and allow them to defeat the newcomer. To their complete amazement and dismay, Harrelson killed them at chess as well, proving that he was not only physically gifted but also intellectually sharp enough to outmaneuver actors who had been in the business much longer than he had. All of this happened during Harrelson's first week on the show, and by the end of those 7 days, he had earned the complete respect of his castmates. Fact 11. Frasier's father died then came back to life. One of the most glaring continuity errors in television history occurred when the writers of the Frasier spin-off decided to give the psychiatrist character a completely different family background than what had been established during his years as a regular character on Cheers. During multiple episodes of Cheers, Frasier Crane clearly stated that his father had passed away, and he even described his dad as having been a well-respected psychiatrist who had influenced his own career choice in the mental health field. This established backstory created a major problem when the creators of Frasier wanted to build the entire premise of the new show around Frasier. Moving back to Seattle and living with his elderly father, Martin Crane, who was very much alive and working as a retired police officer rather than being a deceased psychiatrist. The character of Martin, played by John Mahoney, became one of the central figures in the Frasier series and appeared in nearly every episode for 11 seasons, making it impossible to ignore the fact that Frasier had previously claimed his father was dead. Rather than simply hoping that viewers wouldn't notice this massive inconsistency between the two shows, the writers of Frasier decided to address the problem head-on by having the character admit that he had been lying about his father's death throughout his entire time at the Cheers bar. When Ted Danson made a guest appearance on Frasier, the writers used this opportunity to have Frasier confess to Sam that he had made up the story about his father's passing because he had been having a serious fight with Martin at the time. This explanation allowed the Frasier writers to essentially retcon the character's entire family history, while acknowledging that they were changing fundamental details about his background that had been established over several years. On the original show, the confession scene also provided some insight into Frasier's character, suggesting that he was the type of person who would rather lie about a family conflict than admit to his friends at the bar that he was having problems with his father. Interestingly, John Mahoney had actually appeared on Cheers before being cast as Frasier's father, playing a completely different character named Cy Flembeck, a fast-talking jingle writer who appeared in one episode during the 11th season of the original series. Fact 12. The show ranked dead, last then first. Cheers holds the remarkable and unique distinction of being the only sitcom in television history to experience both the lowest and highest possible positions in the Nielsen ratings during its 11-season run, creating one of the most dramatic success stories in the entertainment industry. When the show premiered on September 30th, 1982, it faced immediate and devastating failure in the ratings, finishing 74th out of 77 shows that were on the air during its first season, which placed it dangerously close to the very bottom of all television programming. This disastrous initial performance put Cheers in serious jeopardy of being canceled after just one season, as networks typically don't continue funding shows that perform so poorly with audiences and advertisers. The show was competing against established hits like Simon and Too Close for Comfort in its Thursday night 9 o'clock time slot, and viewers seemed completely uninterested in spending time at the Boston bar where everybody was supposed to know your name. Despite the terrible ratings, NBC Entertainment president Brandon Tartikoff made the crucial decision to keep Cheers on the air, believing that the show had exceptional writing and characters that would eventually find their audience if given enough time to develop and grow. This decision proved to be one of the most financially rewarding gambles in television history, as critics were already praising the show even when general audiences were ignoring it completely. The transformation from ratings disaster to television phenomenon happened gradually over several seasons, as word of mouth and critical acclaim slowly built a loyal following that grew larger each year. By the end of its run, Cheers had not only climbed out of the ratings basement, but had actually reached the #1 position during its 9th season, making it the most-watched show on television. This incredible journey from 74th place to 1st place represents the largest ratings swing ever achieved by a sitcom, and no other comedy series has ever managed to recover from such a disastrous start to achieve such tremendous success. The show's ability to rank in the top 10 during 8 of its 11 seasons proved that Tartikoff's faith in the quality of the writing and performances was completely justified. Fact 13. Cliff Clavin fought in Star Wars. John Ratzenberger, the actor who spent 11 seasons playing the know-it-all mailman Cliff Clavin on Cheers, had actually appeared in one of the biggest science fiction movies of all time just 2 years before he started working at the Boston Bar. In 1980, Ratzenberger played Major Bren Derlin in The Empire Strikes Back, the second film in the original Star Wars trilogy, where he had the unfortunate job of delivering some very bad news to Princess Leia during one of the movie's most tense and dramatic moments. In the film, Major Derlin appears during the famous Hoth base sequence at the beginning of the movie, where the Rebel Alliance is desperately trying to evacuate their ice planet headquarters before the Imperial forces can destroy them completely. Ratzenberger's character is the one who has to tell Princess Leia that the shield doors protecting the Rebel base must be closed, which means that Luke Skywalker and Han Solo will be trapped outside in the deadly frozen wasteland with no way to get back to safety. This connection between Cliff Clavin and the Star Wars universe becomes even more interesting when you consider that Cliff was famous for spouting random trivia facts and obscure pieces of information to anyone who would listen at the Cheers bar. The irony is that the actor who played this character, full of questionable knowledge, had actually been part of one of the most famous and beloved movie franchises in cinema history, fighting against the evil Galactic Empire as a member of the Rebel Alliance. The Star Wars connection gets even stranger when you learn that Major Derlin was supposed to appear again in Return of the Jedi as part of Han Solo's commando team during the mission to destroy the shield generator on the forest moon of Endor. However, by the time the third movie was being filmed in 1983, Ratzenberger was already working on Cheers and wasn't available to reprise his role, so the character was played by an uncredited extra instead. This means that Cliff Clavin's actor literally went from fighting the Empire in a galaxy far, far away to serving beer and dispensing dubious trivia in a Boston neighborhood bar, creating one of the most unexpected career transitions in entertainment history. Fact 14. Writers eavesdropped in real bars for material. The writers of Cheers took an unusually hands-on approach to researching authentic bar conversations by regularly visiting drinking establishments throughout the Los Angeles area and secretly listening to the conversations of real customers who had no idea they were being observed by television professionals. This unconventional research method was designed to help the writing team capture the natural rhythm and topics of actual bar talk, ensuring that the dialogue at the fictional Cheers would sound genuine and believable rather than like scripted television conversations. The creators of the show, Glenn Charles, Les Charles, and James Burrows, understood that bars have their own unique culture and conversational patterns that would be difficult to replicate without first-hand observation of how people actually interact when they're drinking and socializing together. Rather than simply imagining what bar patrons might talk about, the writers made it their business to sit in real bars and carefully listen to the kinds of discussions, arguments, and random observations that naturally occurred between strangers and friends who happened to be sharing drinks. This eavesdropping technique proved to be incredibly valuable for creating authentic-sounding material, and the writers successfully incorporated overheard conversations directly into episodes of the show. One of the most famous examples of this real-world inspiration appeared in the very first episode of Cheers, which featured an argument between bar patrons about what was the sweatiest movie ever made. This seemingly random debate was actually lifted word for word from a conversation that the writers had overheard during one of their research visits to a Los Angeles bar. The writers discovered that bar conversations often focused on completely trivial topics that became surprisingly heated debates, with customers arguing passionately about subjects that had no real importance or practical consequences. These observations helped them understand that the appeal of bar culture wasn't necessarily about deep, meaningful conversations, but rather about the social aspect of having people to talk to about whatever random thoughts happen to cross your mind. This commitment to authenticity through direct observation helped make Cheers feel like a real place where real people would actually want to spend their time, contributing to the show's reputation for creating believable characters and situations that resonated with viewers. Fact 15. The final episode used a secret laugh track. Throughout its 11-season run, Cheers was famous for being filmed in front of a live studio audience, which meant that all the laughter viewers heard during episodes came from real people watching the scenes unfold in real time, rather than from artificial sound effects added later during post-production. The show was so committed to this authentic approach that they even added a disclaimer at the beginning of episodes stating that Cheers was filmed before a live studio audience, specifically because some viewers thought the genuine laughter sounded too good to be real and assumed it was fake. However, the series finale created a unique situation that forced the producers to break their own rules about using only authentic audience reactions for one of the most important scenes in the entire show's history. The final scene of the last episode, which aired on May 20th, 1993, was filmed in complete secrecy without any studio audience present because the producers wanted to keep the ending private and prevent any spoilers from leaking out before the episode was broadcast to millions of viewers around the world. This secrecy was necessary because the series finale was one of the most anticipated television events of the decade, and the producers knew that having a live audience watch the filming would make it almost impossible to keep the show's conclusion under wraps. Word would inevitably spread through the entertainment industry and media about how the beloved series actually ended, potentially ruining the experience for viewers who had been following Sam, Diane, Norm, Cliff, and the rest of the Cheers family for over a decade. The decision to film without an audience created a technical problem that the show had never faced before because the final scene needed laughter and audience reactions to maintain the same feel as every other episode in the series. The producers were forced to add artificial laughter during post-production, carefully timing the laugh track to match the rhythm and style of genuine audience reactions that had characterized the show throughout its entire run. This made the series finale one of the very few times in Cheers' history that viewers were hearing manufactured laughter instead of the real reactions from people who were actually watching the performances happen live in the studio.